Most people associate frostbite in the Second World War with catastrophic campaigns, Napoleon's ghost haunting the Eastern Front, or ill-prepared troops freezing outside Moscow. But what rarely enters the conversation is how many cases of cold injury were not caused by dramatic offensives or failed strategy, but by something quieter. Poorly designed gloves. Entire units were rendered combat ineffective not because they lacked courage or ammunition, but because they could not keep their fingers functional. The difference between firing a rifle and becoming a casualty often came down to a layer of wool, a removable liner, or the decision to issue mittens instead of gloves. This is the story of a deceptively simple equipment adjustment, a modular glove system refined during World War II that prevented thousands of frostbite cases and, honestly, permanently changed cold weather doctrine. It is not as visible as a tank or a bomber, but it reveals something fundamental about warfare. Survival often depends on small, practical innovations, not grand strategy alone. The war in cold climates exposed how unprepared modern armies truly were. When Germany launched Operation Barbarossa in 1941, it was not only a strategic gamble, it was also a logistical and physiological experiment conducted in sub-zero temperatures. German troops advancing into the Soviet Union were equipped for a campaign they believed would end before winter. Gloves were standard-issue leather or wool items designed for Central European cold, not sustained exposure to temperatures plunging below -30°C. The consequences were immediate and measurable. Tens of thousands of German soldiers suffered frostbite in the winter of 1941–42. Medical reports describe men unable to operate bolts, triggers, or radio equipment. Frostbite was not merely a medical issue, it was a tactical failure. Units could not entrench effectively. Artillery crews could not manipulate shells. Drivers lost fine motor control. Cold became a force multiplier for the Red Army. The Soviets, by contrast, entered the war with institutional memory of winter warfare. While the Winter War had exposed weaknesses in Soviet command, it reinforced one undeniable lesson: extremities must be protected above all. Soviet soldiers frequently relied on layered mittens, often a wool inner mitten beneath a wind-resistant outer shell. The design sacrificed dexterity for warmth, but it preserved tissue. That trade-off would prove decisive. Early glove designs misunderstood how hands actually lose heat. The problem with traditional military gloves was conceptual. Designers prioritized dexterity and durability, often at the expense of insulation and moisture control. A tight leather glove allowed a soldier to manipulate small objects, but constriction reduced circulation. Once wet from sweat or snow, the glove became a heat sink. Water conducts heat away from the body roughly 25 times faster than air. In sub-freezing conditions, that is catastrophic. Frostbite does not require extreme drama. It begins with vasoconstriction. Blood flow to fingers diminishes. Numbness sets in. Rewarming becomes difficult if gloves are saturated or compressed. Soldiers often removed gloves to perform tasks requiring precision, exposing bare skin to wind chill. Repeated exposure created cumulative injury. Military medical officers in the United States and Britain began documenting these patterns carefully by 1942. Cold injury was not random. It followed predictable equipment failures. The United States Army's Quartermaster Corps, which had already struggled with cold weather boots in Alaska and Newfoundland, turned its attention to hand protection. The breakthrough was not technological in the modern sense, it was structural. Instead of issuing one thick glove, armies increasingly adopted a layered mitten system, a wool-knit inner liner combined with an outer shell that blocked wind and moisture. The United States formalized this approach in what became known as the trigger finger mitten. The design enclosed the hand in a mitten for warmth but separated the index finger, allowing limited trigger control without full exposure. This modular system did three things simultaneously. It preserved insulation by trapping air, it allowed moisture management by enabling liner rotation, and it reduced constriction, improving circulation. The mitten structure itself was key fingers share heat more effectively when enclosed together. While gloves isolate each finger, mittens create a microclimate. The British adopted similar designs for Arctic convoys and commando operations in Norway. Canadian forces, with experience in severe winter climates, also influenced Allied thinking. The Battle of the Bulge forced rapid refinement under crisis conditions. By late 1944, many Allied units believed the European war was nearing conclusion. Then came the German counteroffensive in the Ardennes. The cold was not as severe as on the Eastern Front, but it was persistent, wet, and penetrating. American after-action reports from the Ardennes reveal that soldiers who had access to layered mitten systems suffered significantly fewer severe frostbite cases than those relying on older glove designs. Medical officers emphasized frequent changing of liners, keeping hands dry during halts, and using mittens during non-firing tasks. The Pacific Theater reinforced the same principle. In the Aleutian Islands campaign of 1942-43, U.S. troops faced relentless wind, sleet, and fog. Reports confirmed that waterproof outer shells combined with removable wool liners dramatically reduced frostbite. Preventing frostbite preserved manpower without firing a shot. The science behind the mitten system shaped post-war doctrine. As NATO prepared for the possibility of conflict in Northern Europe, glove systems were standardized around layering principles first refined during World War II. The U.S. Army's extreme cold weather clothing system still reflected the same logic, modularity, and moisture management. The lessons also influenced civilian outdoor gear. Modern mountaineering mittens, trace their conceptual lineage to wartime experimentation. The idea that dexterity can be temporarily sacrificed for tissue preservation, that remains central to survival training. War, after all, is an accumulation of small efficiencies. For those who study survival or preparedness, the lesson is direct. Protecting extremities is not optional. Layering is definitely superior to single-piece solutions. In any cold environment, whether alpine, Arctic, or just a harsh winter blackout, hands really are tools. Preserving their function preserves autonomy. In prolonged grid failure scenarios, fuel scarcity becomes immediate. A semi-subterranean, well-insulated floor, honestly, retains warmth long after the flame dies down. These are not romantic notions. They are tested historical realities. The Viking winter, you see, was not defeated with spectacle. It was endured through design. If you value this kind of overlooked, consequential history, the small decisions that changed outcomes, subscribe to Hidden in History. Share this video with others who appreciate serious, in-depth analysis. Because understanding the past at this level is not about nostalgia. It is about learning how human beings adapt when conditions turn unforgiving.